Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a great day. Hope everyone's off to a great morning. So, on today's episode, I wanted to talk about the fall of Rome. I finally finished the podcast by Mike Duncan, History of Rome. It's a convoluted mess towards the end. There's a lot of usurpations and a lot of revolutions, and it's quite pathetic to see how such a massive, such a great multinational empire whimpers out of existence, basically. Well, you know, if we're going by the 476 model, even though a lot of people have made the case, which is very substantial, the Roman Empire never really fell. You know, you had the eastern half, which had the 3/4 of the population and 3/4 of the revenue by the end of the 4th century. So, I mean, by the end of the 5th century, so the more integral part of the empire remained in existence for 1,000 years until 1456 with the fall of Constantinople and the birth of Istanbul. Um, but it was a mess. It was a mess. It got pulled out of the gutter many times. I've said this before, but the empire, the fact that it retained its nominal existence for such a long time is in and of itself quite a Herculean feat. But it is quite like it's pitiful to see, an empire that was so great, but like as I've said in previous videos, the foundation was built on sand. The legitimacy crisis was never really resolved, and it just became this plague, with all the migrations of different individuals, of the Gauls and the Vandals and the Franks and the Goths and the Huns and countless other tribes coming through with the migrations. With the climate, it was getting way colder up north, so they had to come down south. And then you had the excursions between the Huns and other tribes killing each other, people having to leave, being refugees. While all that was going on, Rome could not get its head out of its ass and come together and fight as a united front. Constantly killing each other. There was constant usurpations. The fact that they even allowed child emperors in the end just showed you how pitiful it became. Everything was power behind the scenes because people back later on were becoming extremely racist and xenophobic, and if you were not an Italian aristocrat or some shit like that, you were not allowed to be emperor. But the great generals were basically emperors, and they were the most adept at solving these issues. You had Ricamere, you had Aletius, you had Aspar, you had Stilicho, you had all these great leaders, but they couldn't be emperor because they weren't Italian, they weren't aristocrats. And that was one of the biggest strengths of Rome, right? Rome and its conquest of the Mediterranean was very liberal in its adaptation of other cultures, other societies, and other mechanisms and other technologies to make it a better army, to make it a better state. That's what made it Rome. And that's what allowed it to maintain its stability, because this is a multinational empire. And for you to think that it could still hold on to that sort of power with an oligarchical racist form of government is just not going to be viable. Like, we could look at the crisis of the 3rd century. It was a bunch of Illyrian peasants that rose up and saved Rome when it should have split it apart. You had Claudius Gothicus, you had Aurelian, you had Diocletian. All these were Illyrians, peasants. No one even knows where the fuck they came from. But they were these monumental figures that were able to bring it all together. Look at Severus Alexander. He was crazy, but he brought a lot of stability and things that were not so stable. And he was from Carthage in Syria. So a lot of these great generals, a lot of these great emperors were not even Italian. Even before that, even during the Principates. Look at Trajan. He's Spanish. So it's just a shame, it's a great, like all empires do fall, but this is definitely the most impactful empire of all. Latin makes up so many fucking languages nowadays. There's a reason why people say Hercules instead of Heracles. Um, there's a reason that the language of law, the vernacular of law, is still in Latin. Um, and like I said before, what can make the case that it never really disappeared? Because you have people like Otto Walker, and you have all these things that come out afterwards, especially if you want to get into the Byzantine era, um, Byzantine Roman era, whatever you want to call it. Everyone was still chasing titles, Roman titles, like the consul, like the dukes, and the magister militum. Everyone was trying to get legitimized by the Eastern Roman Empire. And I've said before with the Diocletian, a lot of these things perpetuated and became the integral foundation of the medieval era, of the Middle Ages and the medieval era. Like, it was Rome. It was a centralization of control. It was the fact that people, you had these small time, well, not small, but the small population of aristocrats really started to seclude themselves from the central government, making castles, doing all this fortification, being self-sustaining, which led to the feudal state, which led to which made it almost impossible in the Middle Ages for any sort of government to retain any sort of central control, because you had to constantly fight the aristocrats and the feudal lords. That's what happened in Paris until you had Philippe II Augustus. Like, there was no real central power. It was only a name. You couldn't even call up an army. And now it's based in Rome. A lot of things became the downfall of it. Not only the racism, but the fact that it was just terrible. You had all these constant revolutions, and who the fuck wanted to fight in the Roman army? Nobody. That's why they had to constantly go to mercenaries. They had to go to the people that they were supposedly fighting against. And obviously, it doesn't help that you're constantly killing each other. Therefore, the depopulation of your own country is definitely not going to help you in the long run. Massive depopulation, massive immigrations, massive purging, massive amounts of people just not wanting to go join the fucking army. It's not fun. You're gonna get treated like shit. You're going to die a horrible death more often than not. Nothing really to go for. And then you had child emperors. Theodosius, all the great things that he did. Well, if you're a Christian. It's in the morning. Okay, it's 6 in the morning. I'm sorry about my yawn. I'm still trying to wake up a little bit, but you had all these child emperors, and I've said this before. All these great emperors that left it up in the air in terms of succession. What are you doing, Theodosius, leaving your two sons on the throne? You know damn well what's going to happen. You know damn well what could happen. But it just always goes to the point that rationality gets thrown out the fucking window, even for the greats. Even for them. Like, you would think that you have to be utterly pragmatic, especially in that era. Especially then. Where you could die at any time, where you could catch a disease at any time, where you could wake up the next day with a fucking plague over your head. Like, you have to be utterly pragmatic to the most ruthless degree. A man with that sort of conditioning, you would think, in that elevated position, would have seen through. But I guess at the end of the day, like, I'm gonna die, so who cares? That's also a possibility. You're gonna die. What the fuck do I care? I did what I wanted to do. I made it. Fuck them kids. They couldn't figure it out. I did. And quite a kind of an arrogant point of view, but it's a plausible point of view. And if you want to really play devil's advocate, it's a respectable point of view. You did what you had to do. You're gonna die. Like you cannot concretely ensure the stability of the government in which you created after your death. It's up in the air. It's up in the air, and that's the problem with, things like monarchies. You could be this great man, but your children can all be a bunch of idiots, depraved morons, that we had that thing of palace emperors, which is a big deal with the Roman Empire in the end as well. Palace emperors completely disconnected from society, just completely disconnected from the needs of the population, just constantly getting thrown bullshit in their ears from their advisors. There's just so many things to learn from the Roman Empire, and I'm going to come up with a list for that, and I'm going to get back to you guys on that. I'm actually going to make a video of what can be learned. How can we implement this in state building, for example? You know, state building is never going to be perfect because we humans are inherently flawed, but there are still lessons that could be learned from the ones that came before us. You know, that's the point of history. That's the point of looking back. That's the point of, and you know, standing on the shoulders of giants and understanding how they fucked up, so you don't fuck up as badly as they did. And I think that's a great idea for another episode. I'm gonna really reflect on that with the help of green herbs. With the help of some green herbs, and it's my favorite state. You know, even if it went out with a whimper, it's still my favorite state. It's still the most fascinating. It's still the most lasting. You know, there's a reason it's called the Roman Catholic Church. They follow a lot of the same principles. It really is the most impactful of all. And I've said this before, the only person that could match Alexander in terms of impact, in terms of state building, in terms of really leaving an impact on the world is Octavian, Augustus of Rome. The man who created the empire, the man who created the principate. Albeit flawed as fuck, it was very flawed. Unfortunately for Augustus, not everyone was going to be as great as him. Not everyone was going to be as politically able as him or as savvy as him. So the principate was probably doomed to fail from the beginning because it was obviously based on this facade of equality, of being the first among equals. And that immediately fell down by the wayside. As Tacitus said in the Annals of Imperial Rome, the secret of empire was out, especially under Caligula. You know, there had to be this synergistic relationship because the thing is that you can never have a fifth column. The last thing you want is the people giving you money to be your enemy. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a good idea. Albeit you can never, come up with this flawless plan to ensure the stability and loyalty of the individuals around you, because we are individuals and we are greedy fuckers and we are very envious. And we don't like to see other people more successful than us. You know, for all the bullshit that we say, we don't. Especially when you get up to the higher echelons of power, the higher echelons of responsibility. The stakes are bigger and you have more skin in the game. So the barbarity of the human condition becomes more apparent under the facade of legitimacy and morals and causes bellies and all that bullshit. And then after that, we get to after the Principate, even though that was still going on, even with, I think, Commodus, right? I think a lot of historians attribute Commodus the end of it all. And then you had the six emperors, and you had Severus Alexander, and people really want to put the year of the dominant, which is basically when it really led to central government, when it really became a monarchy, an autocratic regime, was Diocletian, because he made it legitimate. But that fast was already in place. Like I said before in one of the previous videos, Severus Alexander really told his sons, like, only pay attention to the army and scold all of the men, because that's all that matters. It's a military dictatorship. It is what it is. Maintain the loyalty to the army. But having the army as the key electorate is what led to a lot of these conflicts, right? Because you had all these different legions electing their own men into the empire, and then when they realized, oh, maybe our general's not as good as we thought we were. You know what? Let's kill him. And they would fucking stab this motherfucker, kill him right before a battle. It happened many times. It's crazy. You know, you had what are these two morons during the year of the six emperors? They had really funny ass fucking names, but they got killed by their own men. And then you had Elagabalus, for example, a fucking teenager that just wanted to spend massive time in orgies and was probably a transvestite. And then you had Diocletian. I mean, you have Aurelian. You know, Aurelian really trying to separate himself from the legitimacy that was inherent by the legions. Like, okay, I can't have the soldiers be my form of legitimacy, because then at the end of the day, I'm not really the guy in charge. It's the soldiers in charge. right? No one's ever really thought about that way. Like, was it really the emperors, or were they beholden to the soldiers that put them up there in the first place? So there's a very weird relationship going on there, right? Um, then you move on to Aurelian, really trying to do the whole Sol Invictus thing. When you reunited the empire, they beat the Gallic Empire in Gaul, Spain, and Britain, and then he went over east to deal with the city of, I forgot the name. I forgot it. I'm sorry. But yeah, the empire in the east, well, it wasn't really an empire, it was a city basically not in the Roman Empire, but they really started taking advantage of all the bullshit going on, and they really started grabbing a lot of influence in the east, in the far east, and then until Aurelian came around, and he's like, "Fuck you, we're going in there." He left because they said they were gonna be cool, but then they revolted again, and now he came back around the second time. He's like, "All right, now I'm going to kill you all," and which is what he did. So after Aurelian, you have Claudius Gothicus, right? Or was Claudius Gothicus before Aurelian? See, just so many people. But it came in the era of the dominance, and as we talked before with Diocletian, and then when it came in Constantine, it really, really started becoming a monarchy in all but name. Started giving out responsibilities to the sons, and you have to be a Caesar. Like, they were named co-Augustus at 7 years old. Politics be damned. You had to already give the son legitimacy, even though he was a fucking 7-year-old. I don't know how that was. I don't know. Obviously, I retrospectively looking back on people with different set of ideas and ideals on how the world works and how I am, which is why I've never understood people who are trying to moralize the people from back then. Yes, a lot of people back then did some heinous shit. Heinous. But if we constantly moralize the people behind us, then we are constantly eradicating history. And who are we without history? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to hold it against George Washington because he owned slaves. I'm not. Is slavery deplorable? Absolutely. But you have to look at it the most obvious fact. Slavery was not created by the white man and was not created by Europeans. It was already going on in Africa when the Europeans came in. So, food for thought. People can't tend to like to forget that, especially on the left, especially with morons that want to hit us with the white guilt, even though I'm not white. But it's just the facts. People are savage back then. I'm not going to fucking fault Augustus for being the boy butcher. I still love Augustus. He's still on my wallpaper. He killed shitstorm of people. And that's what he did. His empire was built on a pyramid of bones, as Tacitus said in the beginning of the Annals. You have Alexander the Great, arguably the most impactful person in Western civilization in all of history. The guy was killing people at 14. He put thieves to the torch. And all these great men have all been butchers, have all been catastrophically destructive individuals towards their enemies. But that's just how the world worked back then. So, who am I to judge how Constantine thought or how any of these people thought? But one thing I can say, the end was pitiful. They just started losing more and more men. They started losing more and more territory, and they were still fighting each other until the very end. It's fucking fantastic how hard-headed these motherfuckers were. Like you put your personal pride in front of nation. Is it because there was no more loyalty to nation? The concept of nation no longer existed to the eyes of the individuals. The peasantry thought they were getting extorted by the fucking nation, so there was going to be no loyalty there. You had the aristocrats saying, "I don't want to pay you fucking taxes. You can't even protect me." And it was just crumbling apart. It was just crumbling. And like I said so many times, it's a miracle it stayed alive for so long. I wanted to get into Byzantine history, but I'm not a religious man, and it becomes so annoying that with every emperor you look into in the Byzantine era, there's always some religious bullshit. I really do think that Christianity and its obtuseness and its exclusiveness also caused a big part of the downfall of the Roman Empire. Like I said before, back then Romans didn't care. They adopted gods from other people because they made it easier for the integration of the new peoples into their society. It's fucking common sense. But then you had the era of Christianity. No more toleration for other religions. No more toleration for other methods of thought. They were killing each other because they couldn't figure out which way was the best way to observe the one true God and the one true religion. One true religion, my ass. If there was one true religion, there wouldn't be any fucking argument. See, I know I'm making this. I'm seeing more and more like I have a really bone to pick with Christianity. It's because I do. It's because I do. There's going to be a lot more to say about this. I'm probably going to listen to it again, like the podcast, but I'm going to get to more after the Principate, getting into the Antonines, and then move it on again, because the crisis of the 3rd century and everything that happens after is just a fucking mess. It's a mess. And not a lot of people know about it, and there's not a lot of books about it. So Mike Duncan provided a great service to the community, to us history buffs, and I thank him very much for that. It's unfortunate that I found it way after the fact. I think the podcast ended like 10, 11 years ago. But better late than never, right? And he does have other podcasts about the revolution, like the English Revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution. And if it was any good as what he did in History of Rome, bet your ass I'm gonna look into that. Especially the French Revolution. That was a fucking, there's a reason it's called the Reign of Terror. Now, well, that was with the Jacobins, and there's a whole conspiracy theory about the Jacobins in and of itself. Well, we'll leave that for another day. So thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope you guys look into Rome. I haven't read the 12 Seasons by Suetonius. I'm really trying to get away from history, even though it always calls to me like a siren song. I love history. It's crazy, man, how you look back and you realize that, you kind of have to be a little grateful that you were born in this era and not born back then. For all the bitching that we do, for all the bullshit that we talk about, oh, we're so oppressed, that there's this patriarchy that is constantly oppressing us, and we're a minority, that's constant bitching and moaning. Be grateful that you were born here in this era of technological advancement, and not in the year 400, where you were constantly being invaded. You don't know if the next day you saw fucking Huns over the hill, and you better say your prayers because you are gonna get killed and your mom and your fucking family is gonna get raped. We don't live there anymore, do we? It's stupid sometimes to say this, but I really do think people need to shut the fuck up and be grateful. And be grateful that there has never been an easier time to live than now. And unfortunately, easy times create soft men, which is definitely what's going on now, which is a topic for another time. But this will not be the last I speak of Rome. I definitely want to talk about other states. I know Rome is really popular, but I would like to talk about other states when I get the chance, and other people and other biographies. I do have a biography by Lenin. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but I really do want to read it. It seems very good. It seems very thorough. But I'm trying to get away from history, right? I'm trying to get away from it. But I don't think I will. I don't think I will. I love philosophy. I'm probably going to try to read 2 books at the same time. It's going all right. It's just work scheduling. It's difficult. And if I do legs and I have to go to work after, I'm not going to read. I'm just going to be exhausted. Like if you do legs hard, you know damn well that your brain is fuzzy and you're tired, and I have no inclination whatsoever to read because I'm not trying to yawn within 3 minutes. So, which seems to happen every single time I attempt. Thank you guys so much again for watching and listening. If you have any comments, questions, please feel free to drop them below, especially if you have great ideas of books to read, as always. And this is Biblical Fitness, and I do like to read. So, thank y'all. Love y'all. Peace.